Ambassador Kim Tae-ho walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber, his boots echoing against the polished obsidian floor. The room stretched out before him like a cathedral built for giants, with crystalline towers reaching up into darkness, where the 5 ancient species held court over the galaxy behind him. Lee Sojin adjusted her military uniform and scanned the chamber with trained eyes. As humanity's military attach, she had studied every species here, memorized their weaknesses, their battle tactics, their technologies. What she saw now made her stomach turn. The arrogance radiating from those crystal thrones was suffocating. Breathe. Sojin Tae-ho whispered, without turning around. Today changes everything.
No?
The Vorth Chancellor descended from her perch first, her serpentine body coiling around her crystal seat. Each scale on her 15-foot frame shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed her emotional state to other Vorth. Right now, his patterns pulsed with contempt and irritation. "Human representative," she hissed, her forked tongue. Tasting the air between them, "Your species has grown to bold. It's independent." The Granite Lord's massive form shifted on his throne, causing small tremors to ripple through the chamber floor. Standing 12 feet tall and weighing several tons, his rock-like skin had been carved by centuries of warfare. When he spoke, his voice sounded like mountains grinding together. "Humanity will submit to technological restrictions. Your weapons development ends now, your expansion ceases. Your colonies will accept our governors." Lee Sojin's hand drifted toward the plasma, pistol at her hip. She had seen what Granite Lord governors did to conquered worlds. The images from the Kepler massacres still haunted her dreams. But Tae-ho remained perfectly still, his face showing nothing but polite attention. The luminal archon materialized. Next to its throne, rather than walking, its ethereal form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once, like music played on crystal chimes. "Furthermore, your chaotic culture corrupts our peaceful civilizations. You will adopt approved social structures and abandon your primitive individualism." Sojin almost laughed at that. She had visited luminal worlds, seen their peaceful society built on rigid castes and thought control. Citizens who stepped out of line simply vanished, their energy patterns absorbed back into the collective consciousness. The Hive Queen's entrance was the most disturbing. Hundreds of smaller insectoid drones swarmed into the chamber, their compound eyes reflecting the light in thousands of faceted patterns. The Queen herself was a massive creature, her carapace gleaming black and gold, with 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws. "Comply," she clicked, her mandibles translating the sounds into something approaching human speech. "Or face complete isolation from galactic society. No trade, no communication, no protection." Finally, the Skyreach Emperor spread his magnificent wings, casting shadows across the chamber. His golden feathers caught the light like precious metal, and his raptor eyes fixed on the humans with predatory intensity. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a species that had ruled the skies of 1,000 worlds. "Choose quickly, human. Our patience wears thin." Tae-ho stood in the center of it all, a single human surrounded by the combined might of 5 species that had conquered the galaxy before Earth had even developed spaceflight. Any rational person would have been terrified. Instead, he looked almost sad. He said quietly, "We came here hoping for partnership. When humanity first received your invitation to join galactic civilization, our children danced in the streets, thought we were joining a community of explorers and dreamers." The Vorth Chancellor's scales rippled with impatience. "Your point, human?" "My point," Tae-ho replied, straightening his diplomatic jacket, "is that we learned something important about you over these past decades. You don't want partners. You want subjects." Lee Sojin felt the tension in the room spike. Every alien guard was now focused on them, weapons systems powering up with barely audible hums. She counted 17 different ways they could die in the next 30 seconds. But Tae-ho continued speaking, his voice growing stronger. "You see our creativity and call it chaos? You see our independence and call it primitive? You see our refusal to bow and call it insubordination?" The granite Lord slammed his fist on his throne, creating cracks in the crystal. Enough philosophy? Will you submit or not? Taeho looked up at each of them in turn, meeting their alien gazes without flinching. Then he bowed, deep and respectful, in the traditional human gesture of farewell. Honored members of the Galactic Council, we thank you for making your position. Clear humanity formally withdraws from all galactic agreements, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Hive Queen's drones stopped their constant buzzing. The Vorth Chancellor's tongue flicked out rapidly, tasting the air for signs of deception. This is merely posturing, she finally hissed. You cannot survive without us. Taeho's smile was gentle, but infinitely sad. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed our world. We survived before we met you? We'll survive after we leave you. He turned to Lee So-jin, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart race with excitement rather than fear. Signal the fleet. Operation Exodus begins now. So-jin pulled out a small device that looked like an ordinary communication pad. But when she pressed the hidden sequence of buttons, she was actually activating the most ambitious evacuation plan. In galactic history, across council space, alarms began screaming. On viewing screens throughout the chamber, the council members watched in growing disbelief as hundreds of human ships simply vanished into hyperspace. Not just military vessels, but cargo haulers, research ships, passenger transports, even the tiny maintenance craft that kept space stations running. Possible breathed the luminal archon. Our sensors show no hyperspace signatures large enough for such a fleet. Lee So-jin allowed herself a small smile. That's because you're looking for our old technology, the drives we let you examine and catalog. Meanwhile, deep in the Council's intelligence networks, Park Min-ho sat at his workstation pretending. To analyze the human withdrawal, 15 years, he had faithfully served the Council as a data analyst, earning their trust and access to their most sensitive systems. Now he was using that access to delete terabytes of strategic data about human colonies, fleet movements, and defensive capabilities. His fingers flew across holographic keyboards as he erased star charts, communication codes, and military assessments. When he finished, he opened a quantum communicator hidden in his coffee cup and transmitted a single coded message to Earth. The bridges are burned? Come home? Then Park Min-ho stood up, straightened his civilian clothes, and walked calmly toward the nearest transport hub. Like every other human in council space, he had been waiting for this day, as Taeho and Lee So-jin prepared to leave the chamber. The Granite Lord's voice boomed after them. You'll be back within the week, begging for readmission. Taeho paused at the massive doors and looked back one final time. Perhaps, but somehow, I don't think you'll be in any position to gloat about it. The doors sealed behind them with a sound like thunder, leaving the 5 ancient species alone with their arrogance and their rapidly growing sense that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. Captain Han De-yoon gripped the rail of her bridge as another transport ship powered up its engines outside the viewport. The Infinite Journey had been her home for 8 years, hauling cargo between human colonies and alien worlds. Now she was watching everything they had built disappear in a matter of hours. Captain called out her navigation officer, Kong. G1, the stellar pioneer, just jumped to hyperspace. That's the last of the civilian transports. Da-yoon nodded, her eyes still fixed on the massive Centauri research station floating in the distance. For 20 years, human scientists had worked alongside alien researchers there, sharing discoveries that had advanced galactic civilization by centuries. Now it sat empty, its lights slowly dimming as automated systems began their shutdown sequence. All personnel accounted for, reported her first officer, Choi Woo-bin, checking his tablet one final time. Dr. Kim's team finished loading the quantum computers 10 minutes ago. The station's automated systems will maintain basic functions for another month before shutdown, and after that, it becomes a very expensive piece of space junk. Woo-bin replied grimly. Da-yoon turned away from the viewport and moved to the communication console. Any word from the council? Woo-bin's expression darkened. It's nothing but confusion. Their networks are ... struggling. I was putting it mildly. Across the galaxy, the quantum communication network that humans had quietly designed and maintained was systematically shutting down. Every relay station, every quantum entanglement node, every piece of equipment that enabled instant communication across thousands of light years was either being physically removed or remotely deactivated. Show me the galactic communication. Grid Dayun ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with bright lines connecting different star systems. As they watched, those lines began disappearing one by one, like lights being turned off in a massive city. "It's beautiful in a terrifying way," whispered Kang Ji-won, "like watching the nervous system of the galaxy die." Meanwhile, on the trade world of Nexus Prime, Vorth Merchant Star was experiencing her own nightmare. Her warehouse, which yesterday had been filled with human-manufactured goods, was now completely empty. The exotic materials, advanced medicines, and technological components that formed the backbone of her business had vanished overnight. "Find alternative suppliers," she hissed at her subordinates, her scales flashing the angry red patterns of her species. "Contact the Granite Lord's industrial complexes. Try the luminal energy merchants. Someone must be able to replace these items." Her assistant, a younger Vorth named Kisara, looked up from her communication console with fear in her compound eyes. "Mistress, the Granite Lords say they never learned to manufacture these components. The Luminals claim the energy signatures are beyond their technology. No one knows how to make what the humans were providing." Skara's scales went pale. In 40 years of trading, she had never seen anything like this. It was as if an entire category of technology had simply ceased to exist. "How is that possible?" she demanded. "These weren't human inventions, they were standard galactic goods." "I'm checking the manufacturing records now," Kisara replied, her claws clicking rapidly on the holographic keyboard. After several minutes, her scales turned the deep blue of shock. "Mistress ... according to these files, humans weren't just suppliers. They were the original inventors. Every single advanced component in our warehouse was based on human research and development. The truth was even worse than Scar could imagine. Humans hadn't just filled gaps in galactic commerce. They had created entire industries that other species had come to depend on without even realizing it. In the remote Kepler sector, Engineer Song Hyun-ae was overseeing an operation that would have been heartbreaking if she had allowed herself to feel anything beyond professional duty. Her team was systematically dismantling the atmospheric processors that had made 3 Zephyrian colony worlds habitable. "Disconnecting the primary air filtration unit," reported her assistant Nam Jin-ho, as he carefully removed a device the size of a small building. "The backup systems should keep the atmosphere stable for maybe 6 months." Song watched through her helmet's visor as the massive machine was loaded onto their cargo ship. "Are we really abandoning them to suffocate?" Junho asked quietly over their private communication channel. "They made their choice," Song replied, though her voice carried no satisfaction. "They want to rule without us. Let them see what that means." Below them on the planet's surface, Zephyrian colonists gathered to watch the human ships strip away the technology that kept their world livable. Their own engineers stood among them, staring at the remaining equipment with complete incomprehension. The atmospheric processors might as well have been magic for all they understood about maintaining them. "How long do we have?" asked one of the Zephyrian officials through the communication link. Song paused in her work. Despite everything, these were innocent people who would pay the price for their leader's arrogance. "The backup systems will maintain breathable air for about 6 months. The weather control systems will fail first, probably within 3 months. After that, you'll have severe storms and temperature fluctuations. Can you teach our engineers how to maintain the equipment?" "The training would take years, and we no longer have years to give you," Song replied. "I'm sorry, I truly am." But the most critical departure was happening in the deepest regions of space, where few beings dared to venture. Commander Yang Yunji stood on the bridge of the maintenance ship Deep Guardian, watching her crew prepare for humanity's most dangerous secret mission. "The Council thinks these barriers are their ancient technology," she told her assembled officers as they gathered around the tactical display. "Let them learn the truth." Display showed the void barriers, massive energy shields that surrounded a civilized space like an invisible wall. For millennia, the council species had believed these barriers were relics of an ancient civilization. Mysterious, but reliable protection against the horrors that lurked in the spaces between dimensions. They were wrong. Chief Engineer Park, give me a status report on the barrier network, Yang ordered. All human maintenance crews have been recalled from their posts, Park replied. The automated systems will continue functioning for exactly 90 days before, requiring maintenance that only we know how to provide. Yang's expression was grim as she considered what that meant. Beyond the barriers lay things that made the Council's political squabbles seem like children's games. Creatures of living shadow that could devour entire star systems. Energy beings that fed on the life force of whole planets. Entities so alien that simply looking at them could drive a person insane. Are we really going to let the barriers fail? Asked her tactical officer Lee Sangwook. We're not letting them fail, Yang corrected him. We're giving the Council 90 days to reconsider their position. After that, if they still want to rule the galaxy without human help, they can face what's out there without human protection. She activated the quantum communicator and sent a coded message to Earth, Deep Fleet Departing Station. Fail-safe protocols activated. The galaxy has 90 days. As her ships began jumping to hyperspace, Yang triggered a hidden subroutine. The barrier control systems, countdown timer began, invisible to Council sensors, but relentlessly, marking time until the galaxy would face its darkest hour. Back in the heart of Council space, President Yoon Mi-yoon of the Human Colonial Administration stood in her orbital office, watching the last human ships disappear into the void. Her aide, Colonel Kim Do-haeon, handed her a final report. All human assets secured, all personnel evacuated. Every piece of critical technology either removed or programmed for automatic shutdown, he reported. Mi-kyun nodded and activated her personal communicator for one last transmission to Earth. Her voice carried across the quantum network with crystal clarity. All assets secured. All personnel evacuated. The galaxy is yours again, Council. Good luck. She closed the channel and smiled sadly. They have no idea what they've just lost. The transmission cut to static, and for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity was completely absent from galactic affairs. The Council had gotten exactly what they wanted, a galaxy without human independence, human creativity, or human interference. They were about to discover that sometimes getting what you want is the worst thing that can happen to you. The emergency. Alarm in the Council chambers had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Governor Tissera of the Zephyrian colonies stood at the center of the chaos, her usually pristine blue skin now pale with terror. Her hands shook as she held up a datapad showing the devastation across her worlds. 16 of our colony worlds are now uninhabitable, she announced, her voice cracking through the translation device. Our atmospheric processors have failed, and our engineers cannot repair them. We need immediate assistance. Behind her, holographic displays showed the horrific reality of Zephyrian colonies. Massive storms ravaged cities as weather control. Systems failed. The air itself was becoming toxic as filtration plants shut down one by one. Millions of colonists were being evacuated to overcrowded space stations, their homes becoming death traps. Director Krell of the Corvin Mining Consortium slammed his massive stone fist on the table, creating spiderweb cracks in the reinforced surface. His species had built their entire economy on extracting rare minerals from hostile worlds, but now their operations were collapsing. Our quantum extractors are offline across 47 systems, he roared, his voice like grinding rocks. Mineral production has dropped by 80%. Our economy is collapsing. The Granite Lords are demanding answers I don't have. The holographic displays shifted to show massive mining operations grinding to a halt. Quantum extractors, the size of skyscrapers, sat silent and dark. Their human-designed control systems completely incomprehensible to Corvin engineers. Without these machines, entire asteroid belts that had been mined for decades were now unreachable. But it was Admiral Vex High of the Skyreach fleet who brought news that made everyone's blood run cold. The proud avian warrior's golden feathers were trembling as he approached the central podium, his raptor eyes wide with a fear that cut through his usual military composure. The void barriers in sectors 7 through 23 are showing critical instability, he announced, his voice barely steady. Something is testing them from the other side. If they fail. He couldn't finish the sentence. The luminal archon's ethereal form flickered like a candle in the wind, its usual serene glow replaced by anxious pulsing. The barriers have protected us for millennia. They are our oldest and most reliable technology. A quiet voice from the back of the chamber cut through their panic like a blade. No. Every head turned to see Dr. Ro Sumin, a human xenobiologist, who had chosen to remain behind when her people left. She had been sitting silently in the observers section, but now she stood and walked toward the center of the chamber. The council members watched her approach with a mixture of desperate hope and barely contained resentment. The barriers were failing 800 years ago, she continued, her voice calm but carrying the weight of terrible truth. My ancestors didn't just repair them, they completely redesigned them. What you think is ancient technology is actually human engineering updated and maintained by human technicians for the past 3 centuries. The silence that followed was so complete that the chamber's air recycling systems seemed to roar like hurricanes. The Granite Lord's stone features shifted like tectonic plates as the implications sank in. Impossible, he ground out. Show the barriers were built by the first civilization long before humans even achieved spaceflight. Dr. Ro's smile was bitter as winter. Your records show what humans allowed you to see. We learned early that it was better to work quietly than to challenge your pride directly, so we fixed your problems and let you take the credit. She gestured to the holographic displays, which now showed technical schematics that made the council members' heads spin. The original barriers were failing because they used crude energy manipulation. Humans developed quantum field harmonics, dimensional anchoring, and reality stabilization protocols. We rebuilt the entire network from scratch, but we made it look like the old technology to preserve your sense of superiority. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, Captain Ko Young-sik was about to become the first witness to humanity's greatest fear. His independent freighter Starwalker was hauling medical supplies to a Corvin mining station when space itself began to tear apart in front of him. "What in the 7 hells is that?" gasped his co-pilot, Bae Seung-ho, as they watched reality crack like broken glass. The dimensional rift expanded rapidly, and something emerged that made both men's minds recoil in horror. It was a writhing mass of living shadow, easily the size of a battlecruiser, with tendrils that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. Where it touched normal space, stars dimmed and died. "Mayday, Mayday," shouted into his communication. "Array, dimensional breach in the Arcturus system. Unknown hostiles are pouring through. They're eating the light itself." More creatures followed, the first beings of pure hunger that devoured energy, matter, and something else that Ko couldn't name, but felt being torn away from his very soul. His ship's instruments went crazy, registering readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Captain, they're coming straight for us," Seung-ho screamed. Ko's final transmission was cut short as shadowy tendrils wrapped around the Starwalker. The ship didn't explode or break apart, it simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there at all, across the galaxy. Similar breaches were opening like infected wounds in space. On the agricultural world of Haven's Rest, Farmer Kong, Minsu was checking his crop yields when the sky began to darken in ways that had nothing to do with weather. "That's not natural," he muttered, watching as patches of absolute void descended toward his fields like hungry clouds. When the creatures touched his crops, they didn't burn or wither, they simply vanished, leaving behind empty soil that looked like it had never grown anything. Kong ran for his emergency communicator, but by the time he reached it, half his farm had been consumed by walking nightmares. Back in the council chambers, reports were flooding in faster than anyone could process them. The Hive Queen's compound. Eyes reflected the growing chaos as she tried to coordinate responses across dozens of worlds simultaneously. "We cannot coordinate our fleets without the communication network," she clicked desperately. "We cannot protect our worlds without the barriers. We cannot even feed our populations without human agricultural technology." The Vorth Chancellor's scales had turned a sickly gray color that her species displayed only in mortal terror. How did we become so dependent without realizing it? Dr. Rose's expression was a mixture of sadness and bitter vindication. 'Cause humans never demanded recognition. We just solved problems and moved on. You assumed our contributions were replaceable because we never made ourselves indispensable through threats or politics. We became indispensable through competence. As if summoned by her words, every alert system in the chamber began screaming at once. New contacts had appeared on the edge of known space, ships that didn't match any known design, engaging the dimensional horrors with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "Who are they?" demanded the Skyreach Emperor. His warrior instincts overriding his fear, Dr. Rowe checked her personal communicator and found a message that made her eyes widen with surprise and relief. She read it aloud to the stunned council, a gift from the shadows. "Stay strong. We haven't forgotten our duty." Signed, Yang Yunji, Deep Fleet Command. The council members stared at her in shock, the implications hitting them like physical blows. "Humans," whispered the Luminal Archon. "They're still fighting." Dr. Rowe nodded, and for the first time since the Exodus began, she smiled with genuine warmth. "Of course they are. You asked them to leave. You never asked them to stop caring." Admiral Kekstar stood in the command center of the massive flagship. Eternal unity, his golden feathers dulled with exhaustion. 6 months of searching had yielded nothing but empty space and growing desperation. The holographic display before him showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with red markers indicating the locations of former human colonies. Every single marker showed the same thing. Nothing. Report from Search Group 7 announced. Communications Officer Dizis, her Zephyrian voice trembling with disbelief. "They've reached the former site of New Sol. The entire system is ... gone." Kekstar's raptor eyes fixed on the communication officer. "Gone? You mean destroyed? Debris fields? Radiation signatures?" "No, sir. Gone. The star, the planets, the asteroid belt, even the cosmic dust, everything. There's just empty space where the system used to be. It's like someone erased it from existence." Lieutenant Commander Vresha of the Granite Fleet stepped forward, his massive stone form casting shadows across the command center. "This is the 15th system we've found like this. It's as if they were simply relocated to somewhere else. Entirely, the search operation had become the largest military mobilization in galactic history. 500 ships from all Council species were systematically checking every star system that had ever housed human settlements. What they found defied all understanding of physics and engineering. "Show me the Kepler system readings," Kekstar ordered. The holographic display shifted to show sensor data from where the human research colony of New Kepler had once orbited a red giant star. The sensors showed gravitational anomalies where planets should have been, as if massive objects had simply vanished, leaving only their gravitational shadows behind. "How do you move an entire star system?" whispered Thesis. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the science vessel Truthseeker, Dr. Lim Ji-hai was monitoring the search operation with barely concealed amusement. As one of the few humans who had chosen to remain in Council space, she had volunteered to help coordinate the search efforts. What the Council didn't know was that she was also feeding information about their movements to her former colleagues. "Commander Vexa," she called to the Skyreach officer who was coordinating the search grid. "I'm detecting an anomaly in the Proxima Nebula. Might be worth investigating." The avian commander's feathers perked up with hope. "What kind of anomaly?" "Artificial. Structure. Definitely human design," Lim replied, carefully hiding her smile. Within hours, the search fleet converged on her coordinates. What they found floating in the colorful gases of the nebula was a perfectly preserved human space station, its lights glowing softly in the cosmic dust. The station appeared to be running on minimal power, its automated systems maintaining basic functions? Life signs? Kekstar asked as his ship approached the station. "Negative," Lim replied. "But there's a message beacon. It's been broadcasting on repeat for the past 3 months. The message came through crystal clear, recorded by Park Jin-woo, the station's former commander. His voice carried a mixture of sadness and determination. By the time you receive this, we have moved beyond your reach. We evolved beyond your understanding long ago. The barriers will hold for 3 more weeks. Choose wisely. The transmission included technical data that made the Council's scientists' heads spin. The station's power source was drawing energy from what appeared to be a parallel dimension. Its communication array was somehow operating outside normal space-time. Its life support systems used technologies that violated several fundamental laws of physics back in the Council chambers. The mood had shifted from desperation to outright panic. The Hive Queen's delegates were reporting complete collapse of their border colonies as dimensional creatures overran world after world. The Luminal Archon's peaceful meditation worlds had become battlegrounds against horrors that fed on pure thought and energy. We must find them, the Vorth Chancellor hissed, her scales flashing the pale yellow of absolute terror. Offer them anything they want. Full autonomy. Equal representation. Whatever it takes. But their searches only revealed more impossible mysteries. On abandoned human worlds, Council archaeologists found cities that seemed to exist partially. In pocket dimensions, buildings would appear solid from one angle, but translucent from another. Power plants drew energy from sources that didn't exist in normal space. Communication arrays received signals from places that couldn't be located on any star chart. Dr. Ro Sumin, still serving as the Council's consultant on human affairs, watched their growing bewilderment with a mixture of sympathy and bitter satisfaction. She had tried to warn them that humanity was more advanced than they realized, but pride had made them deaf to her words. "You still don't understand," she told the emergency assembly. "You're looking for humans with your technology, in your reality. But we stopped being limited by those constraints decades ago." The Granite Lord's stone features ground together in frustration. "What do you mean, speak plainly? Remember the human scientists you dismissed as too theoretical?" Ro asked. "The researchers whose projects you deemed impractical and impossible? They weren't just studying dimensional physics and consciousness transfer, they were perfecting them." She activated a holographic display showing research papers that the Council had ignored for decades. Project Looking Glass, moving matter between parallel dimensions. Project Phoenix, transferring human consciousness into quantum substrates. Project Exodus, relocating entire solar systems to pocket universes. "Those were just theories," protested the Luminal Archon. "No," Ro replied. "Oh, those were blueprints." At that moment, every alarm in the chamber began screaming at once. The main tactical display showed something that made even seasoned warriors recoil in terror. A massive dimensional breach was opening directly above the Council homeworld. Larger than any they had seen before, what emerged from the rift was a creature the size of Earth's moon, its form constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. Reality bent around it like heated metal, and stars in nearby systems began flickering as it fed on their light. "All fleets, engage immediately." Kekstar shouted over the communication array. The Council's defense fleets opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and particle beams struck the creature, but the weapons passed through it as if it were made of smoke. The entity began descending toward the planet, its presence causing gravity to fluctuate wildly, just as it seemed the homeworld was doomed. Space around the creature erupted in brilliant blue-white energy. 3 ships appeared from nowhere there, sleek forms seeming to exist only partially in normal space. They moved with impossible grace, phasing in and out of reality as they positioned themselves around the dimensional horror. "Council Command, this is Admiral Bang Sekyuk of the Human Defense Corps," came a calm voice over the communication channels. "Please maintain safe distance while we handle this situation." The human ships opened fire with weapons that defied description. Energy beams that seemed to cut through dimensions themselves struck the creature, causing it to shriek in frequencies that made reality itself vibrate. One ship fired what looked like a controlled black hole, which began pulling the creature back toward the dimensional breach. "How are they doing that?" gasped the Skyreach Emperor. Dr. Ro smiled for the first time in months. "They learned to fight monsters by becoming something even more impossible." Within minutes, the creature was forced back through the breach, its massive form writhing as the human weapons pushed it into whatever nightmare dimension it had come from. The rift sealed itself with a sound like reality snapping back into place. As the human ships prepared to depart, every council member began broadcasting desperate pleas. Please remain. We need to negotiate. Come back. Admiral Bang's response was calm but final. You made your choice. We made ours. But we won't. Let the galaxy burn for your pride. When you're ready to talk as equals, you know how to find us. The ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the council to face a terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't just left the galaxy, they had evolved beyond it. It's becoming something that existed in spaces between spaces, wielding power that made their former masters look like children playing with toys, and now the galaxy's survival depended entirely on the mercy of those they had tried to enslave. The emergency bunkers beneath the council homeworld had become a tomb for the galaxies. Former rulers. 1 year after humanity's exodus, the 5 species that had once commanded thousands of worlds now huddled around a single flickering communication console. Their empires crumbling around them, the Vorth Chancellor's scales had turned completely gray, a color her species only displayed when facing extinction. Half her worlds were empty husks, their populations either evacuated or consumed by the dimensional horrors that poured through the failing barriers. The Granite Lord's massive form was cracked and weathered, his stone-like skin showing stress fractures from months of constant worry. Nothing, whispered Communications Officer This is, as she desperately adjusted the failing array. The quantum network is completely dead. Even our short-range signals are being scrambled by dimensional interference. The Skyreach Emperors, once magnificent golden feathers, were now dull and broken. His fleet had been reduced to a handful of ships, the rest lost fighting creatures that existed partially outside reality. The luminal Archon's ethereal glow flickered like a dying star, its peaceful energy depleted by the constant terror of the past year. We should have listened, the Hive Queen clicked mournfully, her compound eyes reflecting the death of her colonies. We should have understood what we were throwing away. Suddenly, the communication console erupted with crystal-clear sound, cutting through the dimensional static as if it didn't exist. This is Admiral Park Jae-sung of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We are prepared to meet with council representatives. That relief in the bunker was so intense that several of the alien leaders actually collapsed. The Vorth Chancellor pressed her clawed hands against the console, as if she could reach through it to touch salvation itself. When? We'll send our best diplomats, our most skilled negotiators. No. Park's voice cut through their desperate eagerness like a blade. You will come alone, the 5 of you, to the coordinates I'm transmitting. You have 12 hours. The coordinates led to a system that didn't exist on any star chart they had ever seen. As their emergency transport ship approached, the council leaders stared in amazement at what lay before them. Single planet orbited a star that seemed to shift between different colors and sizes, as if it existed in multiple realities simultaneously. This is impossible, breathed the Granite Lord. Stars don't change their fundamental nature. Everything about this is impossible, replied their pilot, Zephyr named Kess, who had volunteered for what everyone assumed was a suicide mission. The planet's gravity is shifting between different values. The atmosphere is showing elements that don't exist in our periodic table. And my navigation computer keeps telling me we're in 17 different locations at once. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, they saw cities that defied every law of physics they knew. Buildings stretched upward into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Forests grew in spirals that somehow existed in folded space, their trees bearing fruit that glowed with inner light. The sky above showed stars from dozens of different galaxies, as if this single world was connected to the entire universe. At the landing pad, they were met by Colonel Shinboyora, a human woman who appeared to be in her 30s, but whose eyes held the weight of centuries. She wore a simple uniform that seemed to shift between different designs as they watched, and when she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her. Welcome to New Terra, she said simply, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions they couldn't perceive. Please, follow me. The council leaders found themselves walking through corridors that changed as they moved, leading them deeper into a structure that was somehow larger inside than outside. They passed humans who phased in and out of visibility, some working with tools that appeared to be made of crystallized time. others tending to gardens where plants grew in mathematical spirals that created music when the wind touched them. The conference room they entered defied every concept of geometry the aliens understood. It was simultaneously intimate and vast, private and open to the cosmos. Through transparent walls, they could see the construction of massive structures in space that seemed to exist in many dimensions for their minds to process. Sitting across from them was Admiral Cho Unisio, a woman whose uniform bore insignia that shifted and changed as they watched. Her presence filled the room with an authority that made the former rulers of the galaxy feel like children. "You wanted to talk," she said, without any pleasantries. "Talk," the Skyreach Emperor, his voice cracking with exhaustion and defeat, spoke. "First, we made an error in judgment. We underestimated humanity's importance to galactic stability." Cho's expression remained completely neutral. "You made more than an error. You attempted to enslave us. We were trying to maintain order." The Granite Lord rumbled defensively, his stone features grinding together. "By suppressing the very qualities that made us valuable to you," Cho replied, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Our adaptability, our innovation, our refusal to accept impossible as an answer. You wanted the benefits of human ingenuity without the inconvenience of human independence." The luminal archon's glow flickered weakly as it asked the question that terrified them all. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Cho said, and the single word hit them like a physical blow. The silence that followed was broken only by the hive Queen's desperate clicking. "Then why are you still protecting us? Your ships continue to fight the dimensional incursions." For the first time, Cho's expression softened slightly, and they glimpsed something of the humanity that still existed beneath her cosmic authority. "Because protecting the innocent is what we do. It's who we are. You never understood that about humans. We don't help people because we have to. We help because we choose to." She gestured, and the walls became completely transparent, showing them the ongoing battle across the galaxy. Human ships, now clearly visible in their impossible beauty, fought to seal dimensional breaches and evacuate civilians. The vessels moved through space and time like living things, their hulls seeming to be made of crystallized starlight and folded reality. "But this protection comes with conditions," Cho continued. "The old council is dissolved. The hierarchical, a system that placed ancient species above younger ones, is abolished. Every species gets equal representation, equal voice, equal respect." The Vorth Chancellor hissed softly, her scales flashing the pale colors of defeat. "And if we refuse, then you face the dimensional horrors alone, and we continue protecting the innocent while leaving your governments to fall." Cho's voice carried no threat, only simple fact. "Your choice." The 5 former rulers looked at each other, seeing their own complete defeat reflected in their companions' faces. The Skyreach Emperor spoke for all of them. "What guarantee do we have that humans won't simply dominate this new order?" Cho laughed, and the sound was like distant stars singing in harmony. "You still don't understand. We don't want to rule you. We never did. We just want to be left alone to help where we can and explore what lies beyond the possible." She stood, and the conference room shifted around them, becoming a viewing platform overlooking the most ambitious construction project in galactic history. Thousands of ships worked to build something that hurt to look at directly, a structure that existed in so many dimensions simultaneously that their mortal minds couldn't process its true form. "This is a dimensional anchor," she explained. "When it's complete, the barriers between realities will be permanently stabilized. No more incursions. No more cosmic horrors threatening innocent lives. It will take us another year to finish." She turned back to them, and they finally understood the scope of their mistake. "You thought you were dealing with a rebellious client. Species, you were actually negotiating with your successors." 3 days later, the new Galactic Accords were signed in the same chamber where humanity had been given their ultimatum exactly 1 year before. The contrast couldn't have been more complete. Where once 5 species had lorded over the galaxy, now hundreds of species signed as equals. Ambassador Kim Taeho, bearing the title of human representative to the galactic community, delivered the closing address with the same calm dignity he had shown when walking away from their threats. "Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. We walk forward together, not because we must, but because we choose to." As the ceremony concluded, Dr. Ro Sumin approached the Fourth Chancellor, who was staring at the signing with a mixture of relief and wonder. "You know," Ro said quietly, "we always hoped it would end this way. Humans don't hold grudges. We learn from them and move forward." The Chancellor's scales rippled with what might have been the first positive emotion she had felt in months. "How did you become so evolved?" Ro smiled. "The same way any species evolves. By facing challenges, adapting to them, and never accepting that the way things are is the way they have to be." Years later, historians would mark this day as the beginning of the true Galactic Age, when the galaxy finally learned that its greatest strength was not the dominance of the ancient, but the boundless curiosity of those brave enough to reach for the impossible. The end.